alliance. Joining us right now is retired two-star Marine Corps General, the Punaro Group CEO, and the author of The Ever-Shrinking Fighting Force, General Arnold Punaro. General, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Your thoughts on what we've learned so far out of the G7 meeting, and now we get the okay from Turkey on Sweden and Finland joining NATO.
Well, Maria, always a privilege to be with you. And when we discussed this on your program a number of weeks back about NATO expansion, Sweden, Finland, and Turkey, your insights were spot on because you indicated at the time that Turkey would ultimately agree, which they have. Sweden and Finland have agreed to protect Turkey's national security. This is a very positive move for NATO, really more over the longer term than the short term. They both have strong economies. They both have a strong military. They're going to grow their militaries. And frankly, with the 308-mile Finland border with Russia, it gives NATO the opportunity to put some offensive deterrence in place. But again, this is longer term. It doesn't do anything to change the calculus on the ground in Ukraine right now, where the war is far from over. And frankly, it could go either way. As your earlier panelist, Mr. Charlop, said, where the rubber's going to hit the road on our earnings here in the next couple of weeks. Frankly, over the next 6 to 8 weeks, the rubber's going to hit the road in Ukraine, and it could go either way. So we need to do a lot more.
Yeah, and now you've got China really partnering up. I mean, the U.S. and 3 other G7 countries announced a ban on Russian gold imports following the alliance's meeting in Germany. Gold is Moscow's largest export outside of the energy sector. As you know, G7 leaders are agreeing to explore a price cap on Russian oil imports, General. Is this significant in your view? What is the impact, and what about China partnering now increasingly with Russia?
Maria, I would say it's not significant in the big sweep of the battle on the ground, which is where we've got to keep our total focus. Because right now, let's say we put a cap on Russian oil prices. Let's say we try to reduce the revenues that Russia is getting from their export of gold. The European allies, even though they've pledged to quit buying Russian oil and gas, have spent over $100 billion since the war started. They put it in Putin's war coffers. The Russia still ships over 360,000 barrels of oil per day, $35 million a day through the Black Sea while they're embargoing Ukrainian grain. Yes, we should go after those countries like China that are basically aiding Russia. But again, these things are not going to change the calculus on the ground in the short term, only giving Zelensky and the brave Ukrainian military the implements of war that they need to turn the tide, which right now is not going in their favor, frankly.
Well, I mean, what about this issue of Americans owning and trading Chinese stocks? The Biden administration has added 5 Chinese companies to a trade blacklist for violating sanctions by allegedly supporting Russia's military and defense industrial base before and during Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. But, General, we know that there are so many companies that are currently in major indexes that are tied to the CCP. A window has opened for the Federal Thrift Fund for our military, including government employees, past and present, who are, exposed to that Federal Thrift Fund. This is the 401k plan for government employees, military included, and we are allowing them to invest in companies that are tied to the Chinese Communist Party.
Maria, obviously, when it comes to these kind of economic questions, a little bit beyond my expertise, but I will say to you, anything that uses taxpayer funds, anything that has the federal government involved, our federal government should not be spending any money on China, in China, doing anything to help the Chinese economy, because all they do is plow it back into their huge military buildup. It gives them additional revenues to support Russia against Ukraine, where the freedoms of the Western democracies are clearly at risk. People are always worried about, they say, well, we're worried about the risk of escalation. I would say that risk is far less than the risk that if Russia was to basically defeat Ukraine, that would give pause. That should give us a lot of pause, because it would send a signal to Iran, North Korea, and China that they could use military might to achieve their aim, since we weren't able to basically prevent Russia from taking over Ukraine. So to me, we should not be giving anything in the federal thrift ban to the Chinese government, because that's where it goes, right?
Well,
to the Chinese Communist Party.
It's absolutely crazy. But, General, you wrote a book about the shrinking fighting force. Assess the U.S. military force right now. Last week, we saw the Defense Authorization Act and an increase in defense spending. We will see where that goes. But how would you assess the military today? General Jack Keane is on often, and he says that when you compare the Navy in the U.S. to the Navy in China, we are outgunned.
Maria, I have the immense respect for General Jack Keane. I always listen to what he says. I totally agree with him. We've been saying this for years. And the problem in the Navy is they've priced their ships really very expensive. And the Chinese manufacturing capabilities, they have a shipyard that can produce 11 surface combatants a year, which far exceeds our capacity here in the U.S. But I would say in terms of the Congress, the problem is not the fact that they'd like to increase the budget. The problem is they don't ever get their work done on time. We know already we're going to start the year under another continuing resolution. We've got the ravages of inflation that are reducing the purchasing power of our military. And we aren't going to see a new budget, if we're lucky, till after the mid-year elections, even then. And so we've got to deal with the inflationary impacts on the large defense budget on our military. But we also have got to basically, over the longer term, really deal with the Chinese military buildup, nuclear and conventional.
General, it's great to get your insights. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, General Arnold Punaro joining